Welcome back to Alpha Recap, your daily look at what moved markets after the close. Great to have you with us. As always, if you have questions, you can reach us at stockalpha.ai.
Thanks. Big day. Mixed tape across the indexes with a clear rotation under the surface. So, what really stands out here is how small caps took the lead while big tech softened.
Right. Quick headline numbers. The S&P 500 ETF closed up about 0.4%. The Nasdaq 100 ETF closed down just under 0.5%. And the Russell 2000 ETF rallied about 1.5%.
That split. Modest gains in the broad market, a meaningful pop in small caps, and continued weakness in large cap tech really set the tone for a rotation day.
When you step back and look at this, it wasn't a wholesale risk-on move. It felt like investors were re-weighting exposure, leaning into cyclicals and value-linked names tied to industrial activity, materials, and real assets.
Yeah, that tracks. Materials, industrials, some real estate-related names, and clean energy utilities drew money. Clean energy names even got tagged to the AI infrastructure story, which is interesting.
Honestly, I was a bit surprised by the breadth beneath the surface. The Russell 2000's 1.5% jump suggested leadership was broadening beyond mega-cap growth, at least for the session.
Right. And the other thing is, tech weakness was pretty concentrated in semiconductors. Headlines around Broadcom and Micron dragged the chip complex, and that pressure rippled through megacap heavy indexes like the Nasdaq 100.
The Broadcom story looked like a near-term execution or forecast concern, and Micron reignited memory demand worries. Those two names alone moved sentiment around semiconductors.
Hold on, say that again? So the chips were the main tech drag?
Yes, chips were the main drag. Reports on Broadcom and Micron, plus some selling around ARM and related suppliers, put pressure on the tech-heavy benchmark.
Short reaction.
Quick context for listeners. When we say rotation into cyclicals, we're talking about money moving from high-valuation growth names toward companies whose fortunes rise and fall with the economy. Think materials, industrials, energy, and some real assets.
Exactly. Cyclicals are typically more tied to capex and commodity demand. When investors expect stronger industrial activity or better infrastructure spending, cyclicals can outperform.
And small caps tend to be more domestically focused and more sensitive to an uptick in economic activity, which explains why the Russell 2000 outperformed on a rotation day like this.
Short reaction.
Let's walk through the sector specifics. Materials and mining saw momentum as miners outperformed on thematic positioning tied to infrastructure and industrial demand.
Utilities and clean energy names also did well, which might surprise people. But the angle was utilities that can tie cash flows to long-term demand drivers. Brookfield Renewable came up in headlines as linking itself to AI infrastructure demand.
That link between renewables and AI infrastructure is basically this. AI data centers need steady power, and companies that can monetize long-term power contracts looked more attractive to some buyers today.
Industrials got a lift too. Q1 earnings commentary about backlogs and capex helped. So you had a pretty coherent theme. Capital-intensive sectors benefiting from the idea of more investment in physical infrastructure.
Real estate had a mixed session, but selected REITs and real estate-related equities saw flows thanks to deal activity and shifting financing narratives. Rate sensitivity remains a watch item there.
Communications and media were softer on average. Some headline-driven moves and M&A chatter left that group a touch weaker.
Healthcare was idiosyncratic. Winners and losers based on AI, M&A, and trial results, but overall steady. Crypto-related equities staged slight recovery attempts after earlier volatility, but they didn't drive the tape.
Short reaction.
Let's hit the big individual names. Broadcom stock fell sharply after those headlines and analyst downgrades, and that move materially contributed to the Nasdaq 100's negative return.
Micron flirted with outsized downside intraday as memory demand questions came back into focus. When memory markets look shaky, the knock-on effect is pretty wide for chip suppliers and equipment makers.
ARM and other chip supply chain names saw selling pressure as well. On the consumer side, Lululemon came in as a clear negative after it trimmed guidance and gave a weaker second quarter outlook.
On the upbeat side, Trulieve and select cannabis names got attention after an uplisting narrative. Traders interpreted that as increasing institutional access for a few medical-first operators.
Brookfield Renewable showed strength on the linkage to AI-driven power demand. And smaller, stock-specific stories like Teledyne's and Enact Holdings' recent earnings or commentary moved those individual names.
It's never a boring tape, is it?
Not at all. Now, on the macro side, today didn't feel like a direct reaction to a single headline economic print. It looked more like a continuation of the broader narrative we've seen. Inflation cooling from peaks, labor still resilient, and the Fed's path dependent on new inflation and payroll data.
Right. Analysts note that mixed signals, cooler inflation in some readings but a strong jobs picture, keep the higher for longer rate view in play. That matters because higher discount rates tend to pressure high valuation growth names more than value and cyclical stocks.
Rate-sensitive sectors like real estate and utilities are still paying attention. Today's outperformance in selected real assets suggested that investors were selectively rewarding cash flow-rich and inflation-linked assets despite rate uncertainty.
So, where does that leave us technically and fundamentally?
Technically, the divergence between small caps and mega cap tech was notable. Breadth appeared to be expanding under the surface, even as the S&P 500's cap-weighted structure limited its headline gains.
Fundamentally, company earnings, guidance, and sector-specific catalysts remain primary drivers. Chip cycles, retail guidance, and utility contract wins were front and center.
Historically, rotation days like this are common in mid-cycle markets, where growth expectations are being repriced but not universally rejected. Small-cap rallies have preceded broader cyclical recoveries before, but it isn't guaranteed.
Which means the durability of this move depends on macro confirmation, better than expected growth data or clear Fed easing signals, and stability in corporate earnings.
Looking ahead, watch a few things. Upcoming earnings and guidance, especially from industrials, chip suppliers, and consumer discretionary names, could drive sector flows. Company commentary will matter a lot.
Also keep an eye on the macro calendar and Fed signals. New labor and inflation prints could change how markets price rates, and that would shift leadership between growth and value.
And the chip sector is still a risk to the tape. Any more notes on Broadcom, Micron, or related suppliers could keep pressure on tech benchmarks.
If the Russell 2000 continues to outperform, that could indicate a broader leadership shift. If it reverses, megacap dominance could reassert itself.
Quick, crisp takeaways. 1. Markets closed mixed. The S&P 500 was up about 0.4%. The Nasdaq 100 was down just under 0.5%. And the Russell 2000 was up about 1.5%.
2. Sector rotation drove the tape. Materials, industrials, and select utilities and renewables outperformed, while semiconductors and some software and media names lagged.
3. Headlines around Broadcom, Micron, and ARM weighed on tech, while stock-specific wins in places like Trulieve and Brookfield Renewable attracted buyers.
4. The outlook was balanced. Today's moves could be the start of a broader shift if macro prints and earnings confirm it, or just a shorter rebalancing if those signals don't show up.
Remember, this is informational market commentary. Analysts note trends and data signals, but this isn't personalized investment advice and not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security.
Final thought. Markets closed with a message. Leadership was shifting, at least for a day. We'll be watching earnings, labor, and inflation data for confirmation.
If you have questions about anything we covered today, head to stockalpha.ai, where you can ask us directly and we'll answer live. For more market analysis and insights, visit stockalpha.ai.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back after the next close with another Alpha recap. Good night.